Not gonna lie, I took a little bite of macaroni and cheese.
Why a little bite?
Well, because I didn't want people to hear me. This isn't the ASMR Listen to Troy chew on macaroni and cheese program. It's the ThursdAGE with Owen Casey Stevens and Disembodied Me, Troy. And wow, we're coming in hot, my friend. Like, we are just, I am anyway. Wow. That is music selected today because kind of a spooky subject. Temp is here. Good to see you, my friend. Temp, can you hear me okay? Am I loud enough? Am I too loud? Am I quiet?
Oh, you're perfect for me, but
this music is really bringing it. And by it, I mean a migraine. So, without further ado, won't you say hello to our friend Owen? Hi, buddy.
Hi, folks.
Okay, we're done with that.
You're done with the evil clown circus music?
I am, yeah. Folks, did you find that evil, or did you find that just sort of weird? Sound check is good. Thank you, Bad Devil.
Well, what people are frightened by varies by person, and therefore, to a certain extent, what is frightening varies by person. So, is it evil? Is it campy? I could easily see that being the music that plays when the Scooby-Doo gang walks into a haunted circus, for example.
Yeah.
Which would usually, at least back in the era where I watched Scooby-Doo the most, mean that they were dealing with a cis white male land developer, which is one of the ultimate evils.
Or somebody posing. Hey, Blue Wolf. Good to see you, my friend.
Now when you say someone posing, that makes me feel like there's a reverse Scooby-Doo thread out there somewhere where they think they're dealing with an evil land developer and it's actually a ghost of a Soviet astronaut.
That's right. Yeah, or Frankenstein, or did the speaking of spooky guest appearances, why do I seem to remember that, like, who was the chocolate vampire?
Count Chocula?
Count Chocula, Booberry, and what is it? Frankincense? No,
it's Frankenberry.
Frankenberry, and it's Booberry too, isn't it? I guess they're two different kinds of berry.
Yeah.
A berry, and a chocolate. Anyway, did they ever guest on Scooby-Doo?
No, but Scooby-Doo did have chocolate, vanilla, and strawberry ice cream ghosts, which might be why you're crossing the streams on that.
That's it. Well, so today is a
sort of the Neapolitan of horror.
Yes, exactly. Tasty, but scary. Nonetheless. But
Scooby-Doo is an amazing example of what we're talking about here, which is sort of that scale of campy, creepy, and horrific.
Fruit
Frankenberry, Booberry, right, and Fruit Brute, yes, and Fruity Yummy Mummy, right. So
there was the Fruity Yummy Mummy.
Yes, not as common, but if you're doing the full Universal Halloween inspired cereal group, then that's it, right?
Well, I'm gonna look for some of this Fruity Yummy Mummy. Ephemera.
Now's the season to do it, right? They don't have it all the time, and they don't have it all years, but
That Devil says Scooby-Doo has the weirdest crossover list I've ever heard of: Kiss, wrestling, and Supernatural, and like the Harlem Globetrotters.
What I was saying was that Scooby-Doo is a great example of something that has a lot of the elements of horror and yet is itself clearly not horror, right? They are dealing with even some of the later stuff where they deal with actual ghosts, and they react as if they are in a horror movie themselves. That is not the genre that those movies and cartoon shows and audio flip books and whatever occur in.
I have to bring this up real fast. Temp, I adore you. You were just one of my favorites. Temp says, I've always thought the Lunar Empire from RuneQuest's Glorantha was basically Aldous, Jarzon, and Kern crammed into one nation. They've got the egalitarianism, outdated values, and immorality. And I just love that you're bringing it back to like quality conversation about game discussion, like this program is, ostensibly meant to be. So thank you for that, and I will share that. I'm not sure if you are. Temp is just one of our Blue Rose boosters, and it really connects with that. So we'll take that to Joe, and we'll see what Joe says. As a matter of fact, I'm going to paste that. I'm going to paste that to him and see what he says. He will most likely be. Oh, dang it! Yeah. So I can't really, I can't really cut and paste. It does not allow such a thing. But I will get this comment to Joe. So thank you for that, and thank you for bringing us back. Because so that's what we're doing today. We're talking game. We're talking modulating your horror level so that it's not too horrible, or it is, right? I mean, it's like, so you put it on a scale of funny, creepy, and horrific.
Campy, creepy, and horrific. Yeah.
Well, so I slipped campy in there, but I just watched the whole video, and it was originally I put campy just because it felt like, it felt more like on our brand.
The alliteration is good.
Yeah.
So there are a lot of horror themed comedies, and there's this range, right? You've got, say, Ghostbusters, all versions of which are primarily comedies. Ghostbusters is and the Saturday morning cartoon, for example, was a great example of taking that core premise and dialing it back from creepy, because there were some actual creepy, annoying, frightening elements, and going much more campy, funny with it.
Now, did the cartoon have the Wiener Goblin or whatever what was that?
Slimer,
or the Wiener Goblin? Yeah.
Yes, in fact, his name Slimer comes from the cartoon.
He comes from the cartoon. It was a cartoon.
No, the cartoon's after the first two movies, but
right, okay.
But that ghost, which was a glutton ghost and Slime's Venkman, does not have a name in the original movie.
That is right. Okay, gotcha. All right, I'm tracking.
And then they had the cartoon, and then they had the second movie where Slimer shows up driving a bus, and they still don't use his name. But if you are a fan of the cartoon, you can make it fit continuity by deciding that the reason that Slimer is helping is because Slimer has been their mascot, which is essentially what happens with the cartoon. But you can take that same idea, right? We want to do horror comedy and do Evil Dead, for example, which has a lot of funny moments, but is definitely more horrific. Or even farther, you can go to Cabin in the Woods, which is an attempt at meta horror. One of the funniest moments in that movie is when they have, spoilers for a multi-year-old movie, is when they have pressed the button to allow all the movie horrors out into the elevator lobby, and it just keeps going ding, and 12 monstrosities come out and splatter the walls with guards. And that's funny, but it is not merely campy. It is full-on horror that has humor elements to it. So that's the sort of range that we are talking about.
What's that movie we watched the other night that we thought was very Evil Dead-ish?
I have no idea, honey. Sorry, my wife is listening to me and throwing in comments and wondering what horror we've been watching horror movies, because it's October, right?
Nice, yeah.
And there's a specific one she wanted me to remember, and I don't.
It's Blythe, isn't it? Blythe Wolf. Beowulf will say. Wolf says horror comedy is hard for me to run, mostly based on my sense of humor. I thought Final Destination was hilarious.
I mean, Final Destination, the original at least, has some really funny moments, not the least of which is when the main character, played by Devon Sawa, is aware that death is trying to kill him, and he's like opening a can of baked beans while wearing gloves and almost cuts himself and says, "Tetanus. Nice try." And that's funny. So comedy horror is hard to run if you're focusing on the horror elements and you're trying to like throw in jokes. Trying to run comedy in RPGs is in fact hard. And I think one of the ways that you can most easily get comedy out of an RPG is to mitigate the consequences of doing something stupid. So Paranoia, for example, which is a famous dystopian comedy RPG, although some people play it very, very, very straight and seriously, you've got clones. So if you decide that the appropriate action when the only weapon you've been given is a nuclear bazooka and you are facing giant mutant cockroaches is to shoot one at point blank and annihilate yourself, everyone can laugh at how stupid that is because you're not out of the game. Toon is a famous, inspired by Looney Tunes and Mickey Mouse RPG. And in Toon, you can't die. You just can be out of a scene. Stan says Club Soda is also very good at getting comedy out of an RPG.
It stains. It does stain if you leave it overnight.
Yeah. Well, and so we all laughed, but imagine the other way that you can add comedy to an RPG is to have things that are silly baked into it. So if, for example, you wanted to do a horror RPG, and one of the things that people had was a way to remove all signs that you just fought a vampire tick that was capable of spraying blood 40 feet across a room, was that you've got a can of Club Soda and it will scrub all evidence of the supernatural out of a scene. People will find that funny because, of course, famously, Club Soda is good at removing stains.
I've got to show this pro tip real quick. There you go. Take that to the bank, friends. I have zero clue what that means, but I know it's important. But yeah, so what was I going to say? There is a, would you consider, when I'm thinking of like camp and funny sort of horror, would you consider something like, oh shoot, I'm forgetting the, absurdist sort of comedy or absurdist moments being sort of the benchmark of a kind of a funny juxtaposition against horror. Like, is that sort of where you go, or is it pun? Is it like what's the menu?
So I think a lot of that is based on how the players are going to take things, right? The third big limb on trying to get a comedy RPG is to just tell your players that's what you're doing. Because things are mostly going to be funny if the players at the table focus on being and doing things that are funny. One of the reasons that Toon and Paranoia work is that when you pull them out, people that have done them before or read the back cover copy are like, oh, that's what we're doing. And at the same token, if you tell people that you are trying to focus on serious horror, they will know to try not to make jokes. Just because they might find your description of the leech-faced vampire humorous. So you letting the players in on the joke or lack thereof is definitely one of the ways to work it out. And then you and them can figure out the benchmarks. And this can be great session zero stuff. We've talked about session zero before a lot.
Right.
But there are also, whether or not someone finds spiders actually frightening or dolls actually frightening. I was running a campaign I called Steel, which was the Special Task Force on Espionage and Enforcement of Law. And I was trying to do something funny. And at one point, they were checking the kid that turned out to be Psychic's room because they were investigating weird happenings. And I had a whole bunch of stuffed animal spiders animate and attack them. And one of the players flipped her lid because two of her buttons are spiders and moving dolls.
Oh, no.
And so I thought I was doing something funny and lighthearted. Oh, it's a stuffed animal spider. And she thought I was creating vampire clowns, right? I have put peanut butter in the chocolate of her horror, and she wigged out. Now, her reaction, which I thought was humorous, was to tell the character the flamethrower to kill it with fire. But that was a case of me not doing appropriate session zero safety tool work in advance. Stan says it's a really it's really a social contract to be funny in great measure at the table, but for the characters to treat the horrific parts as being actually scary.
Yeah, that's in line with kind of what you're saying too, Owen.
Yeah.
That this, in a moment where you're going to step into for the player's sake, if you are, I think that there is a bit of responsibility of communication and making sure that you're clear about your own boundaries when these things are coming. And I also think it's incumbent upon you definitely want to know that you're not going to be introducing a person's conglomerated neuroses, but that also, if you are a player in a position to share that and you see sort of you're going to be playing in a scary tabletop role play game, I'm betting spiders are going to show up and maybe dolls. I mean, so that's it.
Well,
So it isn't to say that isn't to say to blame the person, but to that we should elevate our thinking about some of this stuff and really collaborate on communication.
But at the same time, right, I was not running in general a horror game. I was in general running an action adventure game based on a combination of S.H.I.E.L.D. and G.I. Joe. So that's that's another thing that both GMs and players need to think about. Especially in this season, one of the things that a lot of gamers do is do a horror adventure in keeping with the season, and that can very much change what is commonplace within the game and what the GM's expectations is. And you got to be careful with that. If you've been running the game just fine for 20 sessions and everyone has successfully dodged having a failing a willpower test or using stunts to do damage, and the GM has just said sure, and suddenly you do a mighty blow and the game master is suddenly describing the viscera as it sprays out of their guts because he's trying to go in a horror direction. You need to check that tone change by your players, because they have an expectation built in. And I think Stan's right that you can have as a social contract that the players will be amused and the characters will take things straight. I also think it's perfectly possible to do a more meta game where the players are laughing, but the characters are also aware that they are in a ridiculous kind of situation. The long-running horror show Supernatural actually did a crossover between the very drama, horror, adventure, serious Winchester brothers and Scooby-Doo, where they got sucked into a Scooby-Doo cartoon through a cursed television set.
Really? Wait, it was actually like Scooby, like real.
Yeah, it was not a pastiche. It was actually the Scooby-Doo characters.
Wow. Okay. All right. Fun.
And they were running into actual horror, and the Winchester brothers were aware that the Scooby-Doo characters were not used to dealing with things that were actual monsters. And so there was a self-awareness there of, hey, if we drive this too far home, they're going to end up losing sanity and gibbering in the corner. And we need them to help us because we don't want to be stuck in a cartoon forever.
A question for you, just a question for you, because I am mildly creeped out. Is it gibbering? You're the second person I've heard say that. It's not gibbering. Yeah. It's gibbering.
Well, okay, so it's only gibbering if it's from the Gib region of France. Otherwise, it's just sparkling gibbering.
I see. Well, I've got sort of a GIF versus GIF feeling about this, but we can save it for another program. Hey, you know what? You know what's scary? Cthulhu.
Cthulhu can be scary.
I'm often scared.
There's again, a Ghostbusters, an animated Ghostbusters episode where they mention Cthulhu and someone's immediate reaction is Gesundheit. So even Cthulhu can become the butt of a joke.
A Chulu.
It's just a non-Euclidean joke. But we've got Cthulhu Awakens coming out and a lot of stuff that goes with it, and that is going to be a place where people can use the modern age compatible rules to do straight. Yes, Steve Jones said collect Call of Cthulhu.
That's very funny.
I always thought Crank Call of Cthulhu was funnier,
that's
but
good too. Yeah.
but apparently if you were born after about 2000, the idea of crank calls is maybe foreign to you.
I don't know. No, they had crank anchors on. That's a program that the millennials like. A bunch of puppets calling people up and being rude.
Okay, but when?
This is
when was that?
Not too. I wouldn't say maybe like the early 2000s.
So 20 years ago.
Are you quiet? I don't know what you're talking about. What do you mean 20 years ago? Hey, real quick, I want to say Ren says my first adventure I also Ren. I am so sorry. I listened to the last episode after having you on, and I called you Rain the whole time. Ay, ay, ay. I'm the worst. My first horror adventure for Vitaeoth Adventures has quite a bit of body horror. Sadly, it will not be out in time for Halloween. You know, every day is really Halloween. For me, every day is like Halloween. But so about this Cthulhu thing with the Cthulhu, take a look at this. This is the Cthulhu Awakens backer kit pre-order shop, where you can pick up the special edition. You can pick up the Cthulhu Awakens RPG standard edition, Dread Crawls. You've got the Game Master's kit with a special insert in there. I'm going to move you to this. I like you better when you're a bird. There, yeah. And the Dread Crawls. Owen, did you contribute a book of books or a book for the book of books?
I did not. Nope.
Mm-mm. So there's a book of books that the team put together. Everybody kind of contributed, and Malcolm combined them all. And so that's in the Game Master's kit, a little bonus for you. And it's called, I have to pull this up, Unexpurgated Texts. So it's a dozen fell grimoires and their modern counterparts. So, objects, items. We got the PDF of the Dreadcrawl zine. Lots of good stuff in there. Let's see. Issue 0, Strange Places presents the first of our random adventure generation tools. Nice. Featuring mythos locations ranging from offices with secrets to non-Euclidean alien temples. I like it. Office with secrets. Yep. So we've also got, Modern Age stuff is in here at a discount. It is a perfect pairing, if you will. And I bring that up because, it's age. Oh, you know what? We have the Roll20 edition. Look, I mean, this is all just really, really good stuff. Check it out. Go get your pre-order on, so we know how much to order. I want to make sure that we've got enough for you when we do that. So, yeah, that's that. Little infomercial in the middle of our info.
And infomercials can be the new horror.
Yeah.
For that matter, Ren says robocalls are the new crank calls.
I see. Yes, I agree.
So I think there's a lot of RPG material that isn't trying to emulate a genre. It's just trying to use the trappings of that genre. Arguably, most fantasy RPGs, Fantasy Age included, are less about trying to emulate specific fantasy fiction. And more about trying to allow you to use the trappings of fantasy fiction to tell your own stories and play a game being the ultimate goal, right? So there are things that are pretty common in fantasy fiction, like one character becoming all-powerful and being able to split the world in half, or facing the penultimate evil or ultimate evil of the entire setting, that are not what most people are doing with Fantasy Age or most fantasy RPGs. I think the same is very true in a lot of horror instances. There's one of my favorite moments in horror movies occurs at the beginning of the classic horror movie, Jason Goes to Hell, The Final Friday, which is a 1993 slasher film. And
that was a lie.
Yeah, it's a 1993 slasher film. Next year it'll be 30 years old.
Right. No, I mean, you're not telling a lie, but that wasn't the final Jason. Like, he kept coming back.
Well, so after the only two after that are Jason X and Freddy versus Jason. So it's the final traditional Jason. It really is. But at the beginning of that, the FBI has one of their agents go take a shower at Camp Crystal Lake so that the undead spirit that is Jason is lured to come attack her, and she runs away from him into an FBI ambush where they mow him down with machine guns. That moment is not a horror movie moment, right? That's aliens. That is an entire squad with machine guns dealing with something that is horrific when you are an unarmed camp counselor. Now, the movie then tries to go more horror over there, and maybe it does not a great job of turning itself into a horror movie. But it's a great example from my point of view of how the circumstances can very much change what feels like horror. For a lot of people, a big part of horror is something that you cannot understand and cannot deal with. A ghost haunting is frightening. A ghost haunting, when you've got a proton pack and a ghost trap, is less frightening, and you get a fighting chance to come back. One of the funny things about the entire Evil Dead series is that no matter how ridiculous, bad, and horrific it gets, while our protagonist, Ash, is getting the tar beaten out of him, he remains relatively effective and constantly fighting back, even though he is himself terrified and kind of cowardly and running away a lot. He remains our hero because he doesn't get defeated in the long term, even if he is regularly being pinned down and hit in the face with a skeletal arm. So I think one way that a GM can try to mitigate how frightening stuff is to make it clear to the players what they're facing and what they should do about it. And that can come from making it clear to the players. You can tell them, hey, there might be some frightening elements here, but this is designed to be a lighthearted game. Keep punching at it. I'm not here for a TPK. Or you can, let the characters know. If you're playing in a Ghostbusters game, the characters are aware that they've got some options, they've got some tools, and you can introduce a lot of horror elements to a modern or fantasy game and not have it be a horror game, just by having those be minor or moderate threats that are in the range of what the player characters are ready to deal with. A typical modern age character is way more effective and hardy, and with modern age especially, you can crank the dial from grim and gritty to pulpier, etc., on lethality. And the less lethal everything is, and the more competent the characters are, the less dealing with a werewolf is necessarily a death sentence.
Yeah, absolutely. And I have a question for you. When it comes to so I'm not necessarily worried about, or as worried for our community. We talk a lot about sort of, making sure you're taking care of people, all that stuff. We do that with because we care about that, and so do the people who watch. And if they don't, they soon do. And I want to know about doing this well. Like, I will say this: game masters are the preeminent storytellers of our time. Like, they are truly they're the experts in this arena. There are very few that are as studied, as exposed to the travails of storytelling, both in a digital space and in person conventions. And so they truly are and they're training every day. So it's more than Toastmasters. It's something amazing going on there, right? And I think that people may not necessarily spend a lot of time thinking about the impact that has, but that means that there's a high bar for people who want to immerse themselves in a moment. How do you do horror and not mess it up?
So first of all, I want to dial everything you said back just a little bit.
No way.
And yes, I do. And the reason I want to is that one of the things that sometimes happens when we are spending a lot of time praising how great GMs are is that we frighten new people into thinking they can't be GMs because they're not good enough.
I agree with that. I want to challenge you on this. Only in this, Owen, I think that people can rise to the occasion and embrace these. These aren't unapproachable or unattainable skills.
Right, but you can. People enjoy playing role-playing games, and there's a comedian at one point that talked about how he would talk to artists And they'd be like, well, I don't, my art is pointless because that person's art is better. And he's like, to me, art is like cake. If someone brings me a really awesome, delicious cake, and then someone else brings me a sheet pan cake, my reaction to that second one is not, that shouldn't exist because I've got this one. My reaction is, oh, look, more cake.
Right.
From my experience, most players are like, oh, another GM. And even if they are more experienced than you, even if you haven't done this very often, even if you're not sure what you're doing, in general, when you are running a game, you are a host of fun. You are the tour guide.
That's right.
To adventure. And I would much rather, tour guide to adventure. And I would much rather have a fresh face, not sure what they're doing, tour guide to adventure who occasionally gets the water tour duck stuck and has to laugh with us as we try and get it unstuck or accidentally sinks it or whatever, than to not get to have a tour guide to adventure. So you can be a newbie, not expert GM.
True.
And that is the way to hone these skills and get better at them.
Yep.
All of that said, the actual answer to your question is pretty much the same. You've got to try it and be bad at it, and being bad at a thing is the first step to being pretty okay at a thing.
There you go. Okay.
I think there are, first of all, there are a lot of articles by some really great people that talk about how to make horror gaming work. Most major releases that focus on horror these days, if you look at some of the stuff that Paizo has done and some of the stuff that Wizards of the Coast has done and some of the independent horror games, talk about things like lighting and for that matter, there's horror adventures specifically from Paizo for first edition Pathfinder, and it has entire sections on horror safety tools and horror mood lighting and horror themes, and all of that content is not game system specific. All of that part of that book is useful regardless. So I would heartily recommend you pick that up. I know Amanda Hammond wrote a lot of it, and she's a great writer. But at the same time, there are some general tools like lighting can be good, music can be good, setting the scene can be good. Those are tone things. There's a game called Dread where the whole mechanism of the game is that it's got a tumbling block tower, and as you do things, you're pulling blocks out, and if it collapses, everyone loses. And it's called Dread because it has a escalating sense of things are going to go wrong. That is a very specific example, but it's a great example of how to have a mechanical system that builds up. And there are things you can do if you're playing an age game. I mean, for example, if you want people to worry about how extreme things are going to get, you could say, hey, I've got a giant sign out here, and it currently says +1, and that is how many extra stunt points villains get if they get stunt points. And as this adventure progresses, that may go to +2 and +3, so that you all know the risk factor is rising, even if I'm still using just minor and moderate foes. And maybe that represents, what we have is a series of vampire spawn, and those vampire spawn are growing stronger. So you can build in that growing, impending sense of things are getting more and more dangerous. They're getting more and more powerful. It's still not absolute. They still have to roll stunt points, but you can worry the players with things like that.
Right. Well, like the churn kind of has that same sort of, that's brilliant. I like that. And I do think that it is an artful sort of storytelling and using the right tools at the right time and sort of, I think that's pretty sound advice. Temp, I see your question. It says, for Blue Rose, there were portals leading to both the Shadow and Eternal Dance, with the latter described like a nirvana with forests and mountains in the distance. What would the Shadow look like? I'm going to say that, Temp, it looks a lot like ThursdAGE. You're staring into the face of Shadow right now. No, we'll
I mean, my backdrop would not be a terrible visualization. of the shadow. And I am not the ThursdAGE guy, right? So we should take that to Joe. But I feel like it would be dark and dreary and full of places that aren't clearly defined and are hard to see into. The whole reason for me that shadows are frightening is that not only are they a place absent of light and warmth, which are just in general concepts that cheer us up, but the darker a shadow gets, the less I feel like I know what's in there. And Josie points out the shadow has never been described. I'm just saying if a GM wanted to go there, if that's what they wanted to do.
Yeah, and they do. And the other thing is, shadow can also represent the deepest darks of your own. Who like the worst that you have to offer yourself is reflected in that shadow, because is it there? Is it not there? Ren says probably a lot of whispers and creatures that target your insecurities. Yeah, I agree with that. Absolutely. Or just, somebody mispronouncing your name at every given opportunity. I think that, yeah, Blue Rose Horror probably does hit pretty personal, or at least attack in that sort of on that plane of sort of emotional existence. But hey,
I mean, if I was going to do Blue Rose Horror, and I probably wouldn't, right? If I was doing Blue Rose, my inclination would be to not do horror, to do horror somewhere else. But if I was doing Blue Rose Horror, I would be really tempted to focus the horror on showing how bad decisions and worst moments of the characters had ripple effects that caused pain and distress that they weren't even aware of.
Yeah.
Because to me, that is what Blue Rose Horror would look like, right? That you when you made a final. Josie says go full gothic for Blue Rose Horror. Yeah, actually, that's a great other option.
I go way Cthulhu on it. Yeah.
Well, Cthulhu and Gothic are very different, and you can have Gothic Cthulhu, but
no, I'm saying I feel like there is a Blue Rose Cthulhu sort of thing that sort of resonates in the deep emotional spots in your mind. I feel like that'd be something I would. But I'm like you, Owen. I wouldn't do it. It just doesn't feel like the place where I want to,
But that's personal choice. In no way am I suggesting that people shouldn't do it. Just that I would not myself get super excited by it.
Me either. Absolutely. My blue. Oops, Rose. I'm giving someone the business in chat. I was going to tell you, Owen, do you know what is terrifying?
I know lots of things that are terrifying, but I sense that you are thinking of something specific.
I really am. I'm thinking of the Lost Citadel. The Lost Citadel it's got some. I mean, this is just straight up horrifying, right? I mean, it kind of starts you right there. There's maybe there's campy elements, but I mean, if you bring them, but they're not packed.
Yeah, there is not camp baked into Lost Citadel. You sure could take Lost Citadel and decide to run it as a combination of Evil Dead and Cabin in the Woods, but that would be deciding to bring your own camp. You would be camping in a horror zone, and that's fine. There's some great in the Lost Citadel core rule book. There's some great tonal fiction, and I mention it because I think frequently it can be difficult to really express the tone and idea and the kind of stories that you intend for people to tell. And as Ren points out, there's a Fantasy Age codex with material for doing Lost Citadel in Fantasy Age. So
well, here's the deal. It was $9.95. It's $4.88, but only $4.88 with this bundle. You got to buy the whole thing because you want the whole thing. It's the entire library. It's all the good stuff. It's it was the short run print. It was you've got the conversion codex for Fantasy Age. You have the fiction anthology. You've got the GM screen, all the PDFs, and of course, the core rulebook and all that good stuff.
And specifically, there's a 5e rule adaptation there as well. So, which is a full, for
yes.
If you happen to not use ThursdAGE as your primary fantasy gaming engine, and we
I don't know
love
why
you
you would.
anyway. I don't either,
Hmm.
but if you didn't, if you've got friends who prefer 5e, or you have not yet managed to bring them to the glory that is the adventure game engine, the next most likely thing for nearly anything that they're using is going to be 5e compatible. And I'm now the editor-in-chief of Evil Genius Games that is working on Everyday Heroes, which is a modern 5e game. So I cannot tar too broadly with a brush of rolling my eyes at 5e conversions.
And we do it tongue in cheek.
Yeah, absolutely.
We certainly do not want to get into for us, we know this is 5e, and it is it's so good. I mean, it is perfect for the season. But I'm like to extend my horror to encompass the entire year, and I find the more horror you make, the less horror people make for you. So I just sort of operate in that space, sort of a Beetlejuice-like existence. But I do love the art. The books are they're just amazing. Like it's really well written. It's very well appointed. The art is something else, and it has a mood.
It absolutely does. There's definitely a mood to Lost Citadel.
You can pick this up, this whole bundle, $99.99 plus shipping and tax. But you want this? Grab it, pick it up, buy it, play it.
And while some of the horror of Lost Citadel is the fact that you've got undead pretty much rampaging the planet and you're constantly running into them, another aspect of the horror of Lost Citadel is sort of the horror of the forlorn, or the horror of desperation, that life and civilization have been driven back to this point, and there's nowhere else to go. And you see that as a horror theme in a lot of fiction. Attack of the Titans is an example, right?
Where that one just creeps me out.
Where and I have always thought that Attack of the Titans was essentially a different take on a zombie story, and I could argue that point for an hour. So let's not get into it. But
no,
the point is that I
can hear it. Yeah.
That again, the ability to survive as civilization and a species has been driven back to one point, and there's nowhere else to go. That is one of the underlying theories. There's one about a train, and I never get it.
Oh, Thomas the Tank Engine. That is just terrifying. That creepy face.
People have done Thomas the Tank Engine
I've seen it.
horror.
I've seen it. I can't remember exactly what I was looking at, but I think it felt like it was a robot chicken thing, maybe.
Yeah. But I'm talking about Cabaneri of the Iron Fortress, which is another anime, which is about a version of Japan that has been overrun by undead, and the only place to get from city to city is with giant armored trains. But the remaining survival cities are getting crushed one by one. So instead of there being nowhere else to go, part of its horror is we are losing the places and we're not building anymore. So we're not to the last one yet, but we can see that coming.
The other train horror movie was that one train where it was like a Christmas train, and that kid and Tom Hanks was Santa or somebody, or the train conductor. What was that called?
Train to Busan.
It was called what? Train to Busan?
Yeah, that's absolutely Tom Hanks and that kid trying to get to the North Pole, and their undead reindeer attacking them.
That's the kid really was any of the faces, any of sort of the ears and all that. It was just terrifying. Just absolutely.
And they were very clearly revenants of the dead.
Oh yeah. Oh, for sure. Coming to the North Pole to attack Santa and of course take over his shop and then cause a bunch of misery. So get the Lost Citadel. I called it did I call it the Baneful bundle, or did I call it? I had two choices of a B word: the Baneful or the there's another B word.
You wrote Baneful bundle in chat.
I did, and I looked at that and thought, is that what I said? Is that what I wrote? Because I could, me. I like to make stuff up as I go. I'm an artisan. It's the Baneful bundle. It is, yeah. Baneful bundle and $99.99, and it's 51% off That 1% makes all the difference. So there you go, friends. Check that out. Link is in chat.
We give it to you not for a quarter off, not for a third off, not even for half off, but for 51% off.
51% and not up any more or less. Okay, so we're talked about sort of the artistry and some of the tools and things that you might, whether it's, the tools of sort of hanging out and talking and sharing your thoughts, or actually, incorporating mechanisms to kind of keep, the tension brewing. Oh yeah, okay, that's interesting. I haven't played Lost Citadel yet, but Temp brings up that the woe mechanic from the Lost Citadel seems similar to the corruption in Blue Rose.
Yeah, there are definitely some related ideas.
Yeah. So when you shouldn't save horror for just Halloween, I don't think. I think you're doing yourself a disservice.
I think that depends on your group.
Fair enough.
I know a lot of groups that find horror, even comedy themed or campy horror, even if it's 1930s black and white horror, just too much for more than once a year dip. Some people don't like it at all, obviously, and that's all fine. But I do think that it is worth thinking about horror and exploring horror concepts and ideas, even if you're not going to use them in a horrific way, as a flavorant for your games.
A flavorant.
A flavorant, yes, a seasoning.
I like that. It sort of seems like we're an accelerant that you can taste.
Well, I think you can taste most accelerants, in fact.
Yeah.
I just don't recommend it. For a lot of people, horror is like black pepper. They like some sprinkled into their soup, but they don't want to lick a big old block of black pepper.
No, I don't.
I mean, I'm a black pepper licker myself. So. But that's all about personal taste.
Yeah,
I no
honestly,
longer have a sense of because I like
folks
black
are different
pepper.
folks. I respect that. All right, so yeah, I get that for sure. But I do like the notion of living in the space of telling horror stories as a way of sort of amplifying, the tension of a particular. Doesn't have to be like straight up zombie horror or pick a genre, but it informs and helps you build the tension.
Yeah. I just think you want to be careful. We were joking about if someone was looking for the Polar Express and found Train to Busan, we just now cracked jokes about that. But if they really thought they were getting a Polar Express experience and you gave them Train to Busan, that would not be good GMing unless they were aware that was a possibility.
Right.
So you want to be careful. In general, right? Like most fantasy RPGs assume that some tropes of horror that come from mythology and older stories from the previous generation are just part of the palette that you can draw from when painting your adventures. So vampires and skeletons and ghouls, to a certain extent, even things like tentacled horrors like Cthulhu, those have entered the zeitgeist of fantasy gaming, and I think modern fantasy gaming, urban fantasy, and that's fine. Don't automatically assume that means that anything that you can think of from any horror system anywhere is appropriate. I've got a scene from Hellraiser in the Hellraiser 2, I think, actually, as my background right now. And even if you were doing Dark Necromancer sorcerers, if some of them started showing up and you were gruesomely describing how they had peeled the flesh back from their head and you could see the pulsing veins just over their skull, and there was the smell of raw ground beef every time they walked into a room, or even worth ground pork, that might be too much for some people, even if you had already introduced vampires that were more like genteel Southern gentlemen.
Sure.
So an awareness of what is seasoning and what is too much for your group, and the best way to be aware is to ask, is an important part of that. I do like, if I know that I'm dealing with people that can handle it, turning the tables and making horror funny and making things that seemed lighthearted horrific just to spice things up. I did a whole long adventure where one of the player characters turned out to be a were armadillo. And You had all the normal lycanthropy tropes, right? Shifting during the full moon and needing special rituals or magics to not go, and possibly flying into a rage. But instead of a wolf, the character became an armadillo and had a partial armadillo form. And that was neat, but no one was as frightened by the idea as they are any were carnivore, basically.
True. Yeah.
Werewolves, werecats.
A
Yeah.
weremedillo doesn't quite. Yeah. It doesn't. It just starts silly. Feels a little like. Yeah.
And it's not that armadillos don't have claws. It's just that the concept doesn't hit the same.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. They're kind of cute.
They are kind of cute, and some of them are born with little pink fur all over them.
Oh no! Really?
And always as quadruplets.
No joke.
No joke. Armadillos always give birth to quadruplets.
Well, that's got me wanting to ask where Madillo at. Gotta find it. Oh, the jokes. You know what? I'm looking at the time. It is we've got about 10 minutes left. Owen, how did that happen? We started on time, right?
Oh, we started close enough to on time. Yeah. I mean, we've been going for 51 minutes and 5 seconds mark.
Jeepers. I can't believe it. I mean, I can believe it because, sitting and talking with you, I could talk with you for hours and hours and hours and have and do. And, so when it comes to all of this, let's wrap a bow on it. The important thing let's give them some right out of the book of Owen Casey Stevens, which is my favorite chapter of TTRPG design that you get once you get a job in the industry. You get a big tome, and yours is one of my favorite chapters. I've devoted much of my time to study of that particular chapter. So thinking about that and sort of sharing some words of wisdom or bon mots or even a riddle.
If as a GM you are looking at playing with horror, you want to ask yourself, am I trying to make my game a roller coaster so that there's this buildup of tension as you ratchet it up towards the top, and then suddenly there's a mad dash fall where everyone screams but they're having a good time? Or am I trying to do a fun house where everything is just twisted and weird and throwing you off balance, and those are the horror elements? Or am I trying to do, as you're going to a car, a wide-eyed madman with a knife says that he's going to stab you 7 times if you don't give him his wallet? So those are all horrors that you might find at a typical carnival, and they are very different in tone and scope and how you expect players to react to them.
All right.
Also, of course, clowns.
Yeah, and when in doubt, clown it out is an oft said, behind the scenes sort of thing that we do here at ThursdAGE, right?
We may not put it that way, but I mean, my reaction to asking you today what our theme was pretty close to when in doubt, clown it out. So.
That is right. And we do a pretty good job clowning around. So, Owen, talk about what's going on. So you just mentioned another flavor of genius that you're all wound up in. Could you lay it on me? What's going on there?
Okay, so I was hired at the beginning of August to be the editor-in-chief for Evil Genius Games. And Evil Genius, for people that don't know, are doing Everyday Heroes, which is designed to be sort of a spiritual successor to the D20 Modern role-playing game, which a lot of us loved quite a bit, but using the 5e engine, the OGL 5e engine, as the primary driving force. So we have a core rulebook that we are working on putting to the printers as we speak, literally. But also there are a whole bunch of things called cinematic adventures, which are based on some of the favorite action-adventure movies of a lot of the staff and writers. So, for example, I am writing an adventure based on Kong Skull Island that is licensed as Kong Skull Island, right? It's not just an XP. We have the actual license. There are going to be adventures with the licenses for Rambo, Escape from New York, Total Recall, The Crow, Universal Soldier, Pacific Rim. And those are all going to be driven by that one core rulebook. And it's on BackerKit right now that you can go to it and pre-order it. So you can go to, I would just do a Google search for Everyday Heroes BackerKit. But technically you could go to backerkit.com/projects/evil genius games/everyday-heroes-the-roleplay-game.
We'll drop the link in chat.
Yeah, fair enough.
Yeah.
And you know, it raised nearly $400,000 on a $15,000 goal. And there are a lot of people with a lot of experience that are working on this. Jeff Grubb, who was one of the original creators of D20 Modern, wrote the foreword. Stan, who did a lot of D20 Modern work, was doing a lot of the coordination before I came on as editor-in-chief, and he helped transfer me over. And I wrote a lot of D20 Modern. So we've all got a fair amount of experience, and I'm really excited about what this is going to allow. I have been telling people that I was not actually on board for the core creation of the core rulebook. We had Sig Trent and Goober, and I promise you what he wants to be known as is Goober, so I am being respectful when I call him Goober.
Sure.
They are, you know, what self-identification is something I'm big on.
Yeah.
They've done a great job looking at D20 Modern and being inspired by its concepts, and looking at 5e and how it's different, and taking that all forward into a 21st century modern RPG engine. And there's some stuff in there that really excites me, and I look forward to eventually running a Everyday Heroes game for people at home.
So great, yeah.
But,
Pacific Rim, Kong Skull Island, Highlander,
yeah.
Highlander, Escape from New York, The Crow,
Yep.
Universal, Total Recall. You got me on Total Recall. I love that. But and Rambo. This is great. I mean, that is yeah.
It's a ton of stuff, and you know, each of those cinematic adventures will have both an adventure set in that area, but also the rules and options and classes and stuff that we think you need to play that setting, right? So, you know, we don't have rules for Titans in the core rulebook because they don't come up that much, but we sure have rules for Titans in Kong Skull Island.
Gotcha. Well, this is great. I'm glad that you shared that, and I just wanted people to kind of know what you've got cooking. Anything else going on in Owensville?
I mean, always, but let's save stuff for next week.
Exactly. You are. You're like a quest. Just give out a little at a time. You know, so I've got something I'm going to share real quick before we're done.
Yeah, please.
You know, so Friday nights, I have been hanging around with old Staniel, the manual, talking sumo wrestling. Now, I've come to this. Yeah, you do, and you're a part of the program as well. You know, you are winding up and sort of coming back from the proverbial dead. And
it was a period of time I have begun to refer to as the suck.
The suck, yeah. So you are extracting yourself from the suck, and but yeah, we get together, and what I really enjoy about it is that it is we can, Jason. Actually, we'll do that right before we go. Thank you for asking. I'm glad you caught us because we're going to go a minute or two over. But it's fun. It's really so. I still don't know a lot about it, but between you and Stan and sort of. I'm evolving in my understanding of the sport and the ancient art and all of that stuff, and it's fun. We have fun, we laugh, we have a good time. So you want to check that out? You can do that by looking for look for Stanix. Just go where Stan is. Go stand by him, and sumo will come your way. But it's fun.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true.
We did at 10 p.m. Pacific Friday, and then we're gonna do a daytime show. We're between the shows right now, between the matches. So we're just talking sumo stuff. This Friday we're talking about the Hawaiian Boys.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
Akabono and Stand by Stan. Now, if it's a cartoon, we might get Stand by Stan. He's done that before.
Yeah.
But
yeah, exactly. Yeah, you want to stand because we stand. So
we do stand.
Yeah,
right.
yeah, absolutely. So Jason Sunday says, can we get an update on the new Fantasy Age core book?
Yeah, so it's in layout. We're doing final approvals. It's playable. We're super excited about it. VTT support is being worked on it right now. I don't know that we've announced this, but I am hoping to have a VTT specific quick play ready to go at launch. One of the things about VTT stuff is that if it's separate from and not exactly the same as a print product, that we don't have to take the time for it to go to a printer and then get shipped back over. I know people have been waiting on this for a while, and you know, if this thing had been a Kickstarter, I'd feel terrible. As it happens, no one has given us money for it, and we have always been a little loosey-goosey on the print date because we were launching this project just before the pandemic. And so you've got the pandemic and gas prices going up and inflation and a war in the Ukraine and the cardboard apocalypse and the number of things that are messing with any RPG's publisher ability.
Not to mention
to put
just
things
individual personal life stuff happens. Yeah.
So it's still moving forward. My best guess at this point is Q1 of next year. I would love to be surprised and have it out before that. I would hate to be disappointed and have it out after that. But if I was throwing a dart at a board, that would be where I would guess it would hit. It looks great. I mean, Hal is doing his usual unbelievable job of layout. We're getting some massive, really fun and interesting and expressive art. I think I just recently saw the map for the Breakwater Bay, which is the region that we are going to put in there sort of as a starting zone for your Fantasy Age campaign. It's super exciting. We're working on the GM's kit. Gabe mentions the cover art, which we have already previewed. It's going to be a gorgeous, great book. I'm super excited by it. It's just it'll be done when it's done, and
that's true. And
no one will be louder about how happy we are that it's coming than us, and we will absolutely be shouting to the rooftops.
We will indeed. But Jason and Gabe and all you. So one thing we just need to make real clear before we sign off, and that is your enthusiasm does not denote. It doesn't make us feel bad. I mean, it makes us feel like we can get it out to you. So you can say, "I can't wait! I'm so excited!" And you can always ask the question. Always ask. And there is 100%. Like that's what we're here for. This is one. You're welcome, Jason. Yeah. But I just want to make sure everybody knows, like, that's what we're doing. This is what this is all about. Just opportunities for you to kind of say, "Hey, what about that thing I heard once or twice?" And we'll be as forthright as we can. And the thing I love about this too, Owen, is that this has been that book has been play tested and it's been engaged with, and people are really, the feedback was really strong. It was, and so I'm looking forward to it too. And like you said, it'll be ready when it's ready. But so far, so good.
Absolutely.
Yep. Dwayne Costa says, once again, very excited for the Fantasy Age VTT support. You bet. Yeah. That is a Jonesy shop, and we got a team working on that. It is very, very much a priority. So, yep, more to come. And then if you've got ideas or thoughts, send a note to Let's Play at greenronin.com and let us know what you'd like to know, and we shall make it so. We're also going to have Jonesy on the program at some point. What's funny, Owen, is that somehow, looking at the calendar, and every date that we wrote down has been replaced by a show we've already done. So I don't know how something like that happens. So, that is 100 bazillion% weird. Jonesy is okay. That's
Jonesy says working hard on getting VTT stuff lined up for Fantasy Age, and I've gotten to see some of what he's doing, and I'm super excited by it.
You bet. Yeah. Okay. All right. 3 times the charm. Okay. So one more thing. Everybody loves a hero. Oh, and you're my hero.
Oh.
Do you know that coming up very soon, very shortly, is the Eminem reprint extravaganza?
I did, but other people might not. So tell us about it.
I'm going to do that, and I'm so excited about it. What I've been working on is actually the VO for the video. It's been pretty fun. I'm liking it. Some people may not know this, but I did radio for 7 years, and it is one of those projects that I really, I love Mutants and Masterminds. It's near and dear to me. It's a lot of fun, and this is a great deal. Basically, the idea is we are going to get some of those books that have been out of print in print and in our store. And here's the deal: take a look around you in the world of printing and publishing, and just really the world in general. Things are getting more expensive. It is inevitable, and we've been fighting that whole thing for some time now. So you can anticipate that prices are going to go up, but the price of the Kickstarter to get these books reprinted will be the cover price of today, not the one of tomorrow. So it is one of those things we're kind of giving you a heads up, saying, hey, these prices are going to go up. You want to get in on this deal. But that means Atlas of Earth Prime, the Cosmic Handbook, the Deluxe Heroes Handbook, Hero High, revised Power Profiles, the revised GM's Kit, Rogues Gallery, and the Supernatural Handbook, and more gadget guides. The Deluxe Heroes Handbook, that's we'll have that in print, and these will be print books in all their glory. So I'm pretty stoked about that. I'm also pretty stoked that Stan's got this that I'm holding out for a hero in my head, playing over and over again now until Friday, which I will be singing heartily during our sumo program. But hey, with that, I think we're done. I think we have well and truly shared all the deets. We have shared all the scares, and learned a little bit along the way. Yeah,
and that was the true horror all along.
That's right. You didn't know, but the horror was in you this whole time. You had the power to be horrible all along. All right, friends. Have a great rest of your week. Don't forget to tune into our Mutants and Masterminds Monday. It's 2 p.m. Pacific on Monday, though, and it's in the same area. We the same soundstage, same costumes, different costumes, but same chairs.
Yeah, different costumes, same chairs.
Yeah. So join us for that, and again, if you've got thoughts, questions, comments, compliments, or you need some advice, like perhaps you need some marital advice, or you've got a rash of some sort. Send all your rash pictures to Owen. No, I was kidding. Send your questions, comments to letsplay@greenronin.com, and we'll see you later. Bye, y'all.
Bye, folks.
Here, take this. Wait, take this. Wait, take this. Goodbye. Miss you. Kiss you.